Hello and welcome back to IDP Bets. Happy holidays, everyone. My name is Johny the Greek. I am joined by an excellent guest this week to bring you some Week 17 IDP tackle and sack props. He is Scott Soltis at ProfessorIDP on Twitter. He is an author at the IDPShow.com. He writes the weekly defensive line streaming article, and he's also the author of the State of IDP survey report each season. Scott, how are you, sir?
I'm doing great. I'm doing great. And as I think I've told you before, I'm also an actual college professor. So now the semester's done, grades are in, we're in winter break, just living my best life right now and really happy to be spending part of that time here with you talking about some IDP players.
Awesome. That's good stuff. Well, we're happy to have you, man. Glad you came back. You always bring the real good sack props, so we're looking forward to that. Before we get into it, though, just a quick reminder, these are not even suggestions. We're just discussing the bets we might be making personally. Set a limit and stick to it. For help with problem gambling, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. We are coming off an excellent week, 7-2 overall, 5-1 for the official picks, 1-1 in the bonus bets. And just a couple announcements before we get into it this week. This is probably the last one for a few weeks. Anyone that's in fantasy leagues already knows. Week 18 is an absolute dumpster fire. It's much harder than usual to predict things due to resting players and shenanigans. So we're probably going to skip that, and we'll skip the first couple rounds of playoffs, but we will be back for a huge Super Bowl show with multiple guests. So we are lining that up for you. And that's pretty much it for the announcements. Let's get into it. Let's start with Mr. Soltis. Favorite Week 17 IDP bets. What do you got?
Yeah, so I was trying to think about this week in terms of who is most likely to get a sack, because I'm a defensive line guy. I listen to you every week for good tackle props, but when it comes to my bread and butter, it is defensive line, and there's not many good tackle defensive line props. So I'm going all sacks again. I know it worked out, okay for me last time, but the odds are usually a little bit longer on these two, so you only need to hit a couple of them to break even or have a real nice day if you put the right ones together. So the first one I have is one that's probably going to be not fantastic on the odds. Before we hopped on, a lot of these aren't on DraftKings yet, but I did see that the range for sack props for a quarter sack on DraftKings right now is between minus 130 to plus 450. The first couple of names I'm going to throw out are probably going to end up closer to that minus 130, minus 150 kind of range, but I just think they're most likely to get a sack. And the first guy is Nick Bosa. So Nick Bosa is someone who is very familiar to all IDP managers, even non-IDP managers, one of those defensive players that those offensive-only people know of and, we can use to entice them to try IDP. But he's been doing great since he came back from injury. He had 6 pressures his first week back. A 76.4 pass rush grade, played 73% of snaps. He took a little bit of a step back last week in week 16. He actually had his season low PFF pass rush grade at 58.5. It's been a long time since he's had a pass rush grade that poor. But we also saw his snaps ramp back up to where they used to be pre-injury at 84%, and he was still able to generate a couple of pressures. So I think he's someone who, in all of football, we see someone has a down week, and so then we tend to either discount them or forget about them or think, oh, what's going on with them? But Nick Bosa clearly has the underlying talent to be able to get home. They're playing the Lions this week. The Lions are a sneaky good matchup. They're one of only 10 teams in the NFL to average under 2 sacks per game. So for the season, they've been great and have not been a very exploitable matchup. But over the past 3 weeks, they've allowed a total of 40 pressures, which is the second most in the NFL. So they're allowing people to get closer to the quarterback than they have at any point in the season. Bosa draws a tough matchup. Penei Sewell is one of those few offensive lineman names that a lot of people know. And while he's a great player, he's the 4th highest graded offensive tackle per PFF this season. He's only the 31st highest graded pass protector. So even though he's a phenomenal player, there is absolutely a path for Bosa to be able to get home. Bosa is the 5th rated edge, 8th rated pass rusher in the NFL. So I think Bosa has a a better than average chance of being able to get a sack on Jared Goff on Monday Night Football too. That's the other nice thing about it is if you want to, stretch your bets that maybe started on Wednesday all the way into Monday, that's another great reason to look at Nick Bosa.
Yeah, beautiful. Good stuff there. And what I really have noticed with Detroit recently is they're getting into more shootouts with that shredded defense, and they've been having to drop back more. Anyone that has Goff in the fantasy playoffs is sitting pretty. I had like a 70-something point game from him the other week just because he's dropping back so much. So, yeah, I think this lines up real well with that shredded Detroit defense. That they're gonna have to pass this game, and Bosa's the guy, no doubt. Nice, good stuff there. I did forget, my apologies, one quick announcement. If anyone's looking for start-sit advice this week, we will have the live show this Sunday morning on the YouTube. Scott did that recently. Good experience, right?
Oh, yeah, I love it. Every time it's fun. Even when I'm not on, I'm either sending lineup questions. I sent a strategy question last week that ended up playing out well, and it's a great show. Love being on it. Love watching it. Really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I know we're going to get some of those questions tonight. So please, forward that to the fellas this Sunday morning. All righty. For my first one for week 17, excuse me, I'm going to go with a linebacker. I'm going to take Christian Roseboom over 9.5 combined tackles at -105. He's cleared that line in 6 games this season and has a great opportunity to do so again this week against the Cardinals team that's allowing the 4th most tackles to opposing linebackers throughout the league. Arizona allows 18.1 linebacker tackles per game, and with Roseboom playing about 96% of snaps now, 96% last week, 87% the week prior, his only downside, which was that playing time that maxed out around 75% of snaps earlier this season, is no longer a concern. So that's another good factor for us as well. Arizona offensively, they like to, they're the 5th best rushing attack in the league. They do a lot of short passes over the middle to McBride. Roseboom is going to be in the area where most of the action is happening this week. And that's a great setup on top of the other factors we already talked about. So this is looking good from a few different angles. We'll see if it happens. Thoughts on that one?
No, I like it. Like you said, the snaps were a concern before, and those seem to have pretty clearly abated. I'm almost always chasing snaps, whether it's props or just who I'm starting in a given week, because we know that's the top predictor of any kind of fantasy output. So I like it. I'm here for it.
Yeah, and it's a weird week too, right? We've already had a bunch of games happen. Options are limited. They're late getting stuff out as usual. So this is the best of what's available.
Yeah.
All righty, what do you got for number 2?
Yeah, so I couldn't go too long without talking about one of the real big guys in the middle, which is where I sort of got my start in this whole journey. But I'm looking at Zach Sealer, defensive tackle out of Miami. He has been absolutely on fire at a pace that is likely not to be able to be sustained. He only has 11 pressures over the last 3 games, but 5 of them have been converted to sacks, which is just an obscene conversion rate, which no one is going to sustain in the long term. But the reason I'm not jumping off of him yet, and I'm actually looking at him really closely this week, is he has that underlying talent. He is the 8th highest rated defensive tackle in 2024 per PFF, 20th in pass rush grade. He's played over 80% of snaps each of the last 4 weeks, which is a great number for an edge, let alone an interior player. In terms of their opponent this week, they're playing the Browns. And as a Bengals fan, I watched the entirety of the DTR experience last week against the Bengals, and I saw them just constantly harassing him. I saw Mike Hilton get robbed of 2 sacks, which I still don't understand how there wasn't a stat correction for at least one of those, because unless the stat guy had a bug in the headset to know that it was a run, he got there. Sorry, I'm going off on a tangent here, but he was sacked 5 times, should have been 7 if you actually watch the game. But pressured 25 times in a single game, which is a pretty big number. 6 of those came from interior defenders. Chris Jenkins had his first ever multiple sack game. McKinley Jackson, one of our deeper rotational players, picked up a sack. So Cleveland, whether it was Winston or DTR, because I know there's a little bit of ambiguity about what they might end up doing, they have allowed the most sacks in the NFL over the past 3 games. So it's a highly exploitable matchup from that standpoint. When we look at the specific opponent that Sealer is likely to be lining up against, it's Joel Bitonio, who is a great offensive lineman. I feel a little bit crazy for saying, hey, attack Penei Sewell and Joel Bitonio with my first 2 picks. But if you look at him, he's having his worst season in his career so far, in his amazing career. He is the 41st graded offensive guard in the NFL. He's a little bit better in his pass block grade, where he grades out as the 26th best offensive guard, but he's not someone who's going to scare me away. And Sealer has the talent, and DTR has just been a sack magnet. And again, like I said, the Browns have just been a highly exploitable matchup as of late. So Zach Sealer is my second option, who I'm guessing is not going to have phenomenal odds, but still, I think he is probably the second most likely player to get a sack. If I was just told, hey, who do you think is going to get a sack this week?
Yeah, he's been on fire lately too. He's been very, very good for us throughout the fantasy playoffs. And you're right, that Cleveland offensive line has just been a sieve this entire season. And if they go with DTR again, he was producing no offense, zero, nothing. They'll be in a negative game script almost immediately, and it's not going to go well for them. So I'm with you. That lines up pretty good, I think.
Yeah, and I know we don't talk a lot of team defense, across what we do, because we lean into the fact that individual players are a lot more fun to play. But I thought this was such a great matchup. I picked up the Dolphins as my streaming defense for my championship game in one of my leagues. So I'm fully committed, and I think I know Robinson. They have posted a number for him I saw recently, and he is the most likely to get a sack. I don't think they have added in. They do have Sealer now. So Sealer is plus 110 at over a quarter sack on DraftKings.
Oh, that's
So
beautiful. Yeah.
I didn't think he'd be in plus territory. The fact that he is just makes it more attractive for me.
Yeah. Oh, that's phenomenal right there. Yeah, we'll take that. And I also grabbed Cleveland 2 weeks ago for title games, plural, where I have team defense. Once the DTR thing started, I was like, I gotta get whoever's playing these guys in week 17.
Smart man, smart man.
Yeah, we plan for success around here.
Mm-hmm.
Nice, beautiful. That lines up so well. Positive money too. Who would have thought? We'll take it.
Mm-hmm.
All righty, number 2 for me. I'm going to go back to a trusty old vet here. I'm going to take Foye Oluokun over 8.5 combined at minus 120. He's cleared that line in 5 of 11 games he's played so far this season, and he's in a great spot to do so again this week against a Titans team that's allowing 17.3 linebacker tackles per game. That's 11th overall, and it's actually only 2 off the lead, which is Pittsburgh, and only 1 off the second place team. For allowing linebacker tackles per game. So it's not that far away from being the best in the league, is what I'm saying. Jacksonville as a defense is essentially Swiss cheese. They're also dead last in offensive time of possession in the league at just 26 minutes per game of offensive time of possession. Tennessee should be able to run plenty of plays with this in mind. Oluokun had 11 combined tackles against Tennessee back in week 14. And not much has changed since then, except more injuries to further degrade this already bad Jacksonville defense. They'll be on the field a ton this week up against a team that likes to run the ball, and they allow plenty of tackles to opposing linebackers. So that's about as good as it gets for a setup. And, to trust Foye in that kind of setup, I think is pretty much a slam dunk. Thoughts on that one?
Sorry about that. I muted for a cough a second ago.
Oh yeah, no worries. No, we're good. Go ahead.
Yeah, it is head cold season across the country. So
Thank
I'm
you.
no
Thank you,
exception.
Chris, by the way.
But no, I like that. One of the things I like a lot about is he's a stud, and you love starting your studs. Players. I know this year was choppier than the past couple of years, but we know what he can do. He is probably still one of the top, maybe worst case 5 fantasy assets at linebacker for dynasty purposes. So I like going with guys that we've seen do it plenty of times before, especially here at the end, whether it's a playoff game or if it's trying to see what your final number is going to look like in your account. So riding with stars is never a bad strategy. And I'm also teeing myself up a little bit here too for another kind of chalky pick, but I do like it. I like Foyer a lot.
Yeah, no, he's in a good spot, and it's Foyer. You know, we could trust worse, that's for sure. Yeah, who you teeing up? Who you got?
Yeah, so it's Micah Parsons. So I know this is probably one of the least shocking names to be able to see with, Watt having already played. I just don't like Myles Garrett's matchup quite as much, or even Hendrickson this week. And when you look at edges, no one has been hotter than Parsons. I know that Hendrickson's leading the league in sacks. TJ Watt gets all of the attention and praise because he's TJ Watt. Myles Garrett, like you said, the DPOY runs through him. But over the past 4 weeks, Micah Parsons has just been incredible. 27 pressures, that leads the league over the past 4 weeks. 6 sacks, that leads the league over the past 4 weeks. And none of these have been like luck sacks. Sometimes you luck into the quarterback just runs into you, or the C's part and they forget to block you. He has a minimum 72.9 individual pass rush grade across those 4 games, which is just phenomenal. Since he's been back from injury, he's played between 75 and 95% of snaps. So he's out there. The one thing that is maybe a little bit concerning is they're playing the Eagles this week. And in terms of a sack metrics standpoint, it looks great. I know there's some fears that the Eagles might run away with this, literally trying to get Saquon Barkley the single season rushing title and just be running the ball like crazy, especially with Kenny Pickett back there as their likely gunslinger this week. But to the extent that they have to pass it all, the Cowboys are in a really nice position to be able to pick up a sack. The Eagles are one of only 6 teams in the NFL to allow an average of 3.5 sacks a game over their past 3. So they've been giving up sacks in bunches, even with Hurts as the quarterback. Pickett was pressured 10 times on 30 dropbacks last week against a much worse defensive line. I know the Cowboys can be maligned for various reasons, but if you've been starting Chauncey Golston in your fantasy playoffs, you've been happy. Osa Odigizua, you've been happy. Parsons, you've been happy. So the Eagles are a sneaky, decent matchup. The thing that is the most difficult part of it for Parsons in particular is that Lane Johnson hasn't given up a sack this season. So it's going to be one of those awesome strength on strength. They're going to be zooming in on that matchup throughout the game. So it's going to be really fun to see. But I think Parsons is still in a great position to pick up a sack on Kenny Pickett. And I actually had a 3B on this one. I mentioned Osa Odigizua before. If you're someone who is more risk tolerant and you want to see a name with a little bit of a higher plus with it, Odigizua is another great option in this same game. 20 pressures over the past 4, which is 3rd most among interior defenders in the NFL. 2 sacks over the past 4, which is 5th most for defensive tackles. Playing at least 76% of snaps. High is 91%. Has a little bit better matchup in terms of Mekhi Becton. When you look at who he's going up against individually, he's the 38th graded pass blocker. Hasn't allowed a sack since week 6. So a lot of the sacks that have been coming haven't really been because of those 2. But still, I like Parsons as the safer play. He has, I think, a higher probability of getting a sack. But if you want another guy who has a decent chance of picking one up, who is going to have much better odds, I would have to guess, then give Osa Odigizua a look as well.
Yeah, I'm with you on this, especially because Pickett's going to be back there this week, and he's far easier to sack in general. And if you looked at this from a 30,000-foot view, the Cowboys' rush defense is garbage. So your automatic thought would be what you said. This is the week to get Saquon the record. Backup quarterback, terrible rush defense at home, get Saquon the record. But Dallas has been actually better the last few weeks in rush defense. And they know that's the game plan. They're going to be ready for it. So I think Pickett is going to have to drop back. And like you said, he was running for his life last week. So, I'm expecting more of the same this week.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. Good stuff there. Alrighty, number 3 for me. I am going to go with a safety for this one. Jordan Battle of your Bengals over 6.5 combined tackles at -120. So he's cleared that line in only 3 of 7 games that he's seen legitimate playing time this season. But that's been our biggest issue, right? Is getting him legitimate playing time. He's now playing about 95% of snaps per week and has been seeing starter level playing time since week 13. So we're actually looking good with that now. And that was the only problem. He is productive. And his opponent this week, the Broncos, allow 14.8 safety tackles per game. That's 4th best across the entire league. Vegas has this game at 49.5 points for the total, with Cincy favored by just a field goal at home. So Vegas thinks we're getting a shootout in a close game, which is exactly the kind of game script we need for this kind of bet to hit. We've got some nice factors all pointing towards the over for Battle this week. We'll see if it happens, but I do have a Bengals fan on the show this week, so he can tell me.
Yeah, no, I like Battle. I'm riding him in one of my leagues where unfortunately I'm not in the main playoffs, but I am in the consolation bracket, and the winner gets 1.01. So I'm playing for a lot this week,
Ooh,
and
yeah.
I'm playing Battle. So I think he is in a great spot there against Denver. I like the Denver side of it too. I'm starting Brandon Jones in a couple of places. If we're just having general safety talk, I don't know what his props look like, but the Bengals do a lot across the middle. Even with the wide receivers, Higgins likes to go across the middle. Chase likes to go across the middle. The highlight plays you see are them, getting deep or, Chase doing some magic and then turning a 5-yard pass into a 75-yard touchdown. But when you watch the Bengals as much as I do, for better or worse, you do see a lot of over the middle of the field action. And I think the Broncos end up doing a lot of the same as well. Bo Nix has been from a fantasy perspective, arguably the best rookie quarterback. I know Jaden Daniels is probably a little bit higher than him, but it's not far off. And again, it's much closer than we expected coming into the season. So I know, as you said, Knicks and that Broncos offense give up tackles to safeties. Between the Bengals safety room, Battle is the one that I want. Stone is a splash play waiting to happen. Von Bell had a splash play last week, but Battle is more of that steady force. So if you're looking for the surest tackle play, I'm with you. Battle's the guy.
Nice. Good stuff there. All right. I think we got some bonus bets. You got anything for us for this week?
Yeah, so this is another one where I've got a 1A, 1B, depending on how much risk tolerance you have from the same game. And it's the Tampa Bay versus Carolina game. And it's either Yaya Diaby as that 1A, who's probably going to maybe on the little plus side, or Vita Vea, who's probably going to be much higher on the plus side. So looking at Diaby first, he played 92% of snaps last week. So he's getting that volume. He's getting that opportunity. But if you play him in fantasy or have been betting his props over the past couple of weeks, you've been disappointed. He only had 2 pressures last week on that 92% snap share, which was just not great. Only 10 pressures generated over the past 3 games in general. His PFF grades are good, not great across that time, ranging from 57 to 71.1 just in terms of that pass rush metric we're focused on. The reason I know I'm here kind of saying, yeah, Diaby, has some question marks. The reason why I'm still very interested in him and Vita Vea as a longer shot is their opponent. So they're playing the Panthers, as I mentioned this week. The Panthers are only allowing an average of 2.1 sacks per game on the season, but that number has jumped to 3.3 over the past 3 games. So they're giving up sacks in bunches now. So when I do my modeling and I look at fantasy points allowed to position, Carolina doesn't look like a great matchup. And I even said in my DL streaming that, I have Vita Vea higher than Osa Odigizua, but, historically Carolina hasn't been a great matchup. But over the past 3, they have. Really, in that time, no quarterback in the NFL has been pressured more than Bryce Young. He has 41 pressures over the past 3 games allowed, and he has allowed 10 of those himself. So it's a mixture of line play and him running into pressure, which is what we like to see. Because if it's just all quarterback, then the line can make up for that in some way, or if it's all line. But, that 25% rate for his pressures being self-generated is a target that is really attractive to me. And then when it comes to the matchup, Diaby is likely going to be seeing Yash Nijman, who I know next to nothing about because Taylor Moton looks like he's out. So if Nijman is playing at right tackle, he has played in 3 games earlier this season, allowed 6 pressures over a 2.5-week stretch. So it seems like it can be a pretty exploitable matchup. And then I mentioned my B option in that same game, Vita Vea, whose odds are likely to be better. He's playing 70 to 80% of snaps. I know you just look at Vita Vea and think that man is too large to be playing reliable snaps, but he has been. He has been a pretty reliable snap getter this season, ranging 70 to 80% over the last 4 weeks. So that's pretty good for an interior defender, especially someone who plays a lot of nose. He's put up 13 pressures since his last game with a sack. So he's due for some of that positive regression, whereas some players are definitely overperforming their pressures. He's underperforming them a little bit, and that should help to lengthen his odds, which can be a good thing for us. And then in terms of his individual matchup in this general matchup that I like, he, as much as he lines up at nose, will be drawing Brady Christensen, who is the 31st rated pass blocking center in the NFL. There are 32 teams, 40 players have grades, but still 31 is not good at all. He's allowed 13 pressures across his last 4 games, dating back to week 8 when he's played some left tackle and some center. So he's not necessarily a natural center as well. So I think Diaby is probably a little bit more likely to pick up a sack in this game, but I think Vea has a really good chance as well. And I'm guessing Vea's number is going to be significantly higher with much better odds if you're willing to take that risk.
Yeah, and this game was weird the first time around. Remember, it was crazy last second overtime. Baker Mayfield, and they won an OT. I don't know if it will be. I think it could be the bloodbath that we were supposed to get the first time around because Tampa Bay really needs this game in the worst way possible, and they are the better team. So I wouldn't be surprised to just if they blew away Carolina, and Carolina was in a negative game script pretty quickly, forced to pass more than they want to. So yeah, that lines up pretty good, I think.
Thanks.
All righty, and I gotta go with the corner for the bonus bet here. He got me to my final in the cornerbacks only league I'm in because I'm an insane person. So I'm gonna take Kenny Moore over 4.5 combined tackles at plus 120. Great price there. He's cleared that line 8 times already this season. And this week, he gets the number 3 team across the league for allowing cornerback tackles in the Giants. They allow 15.1 per game. So here's the deal with this, though. The vast majority of that ranking and their top 5 wide receiver targets ranking is all powered by Malik Neighbors. So if he doesn't play this week, abandon ship, don't touch this, stay away from it. But if he does, this is a great setup for Kenny Moore to take advantage of the just ridiculous amount of targets he gets every week. And then also, the rest of the Giants receivers get a pretty good amount of targets as well. So I think he's in a good spot this week, especially if Neighbors plays, and that's a pretty good price. Any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I like it. Honestly, the part that jumped out to me the most is the CB only league, and it made me think, man, I should start a defensive tackle only league. That would be an absolute blast to do as well, as long as you can find some real degenerates that are interested in that sort of thing. But no, it's hard to go against Kenny Moore. He is pretty regularly one of the top 2 or 3 corners drafted in all the best balls that I do when we think about corners because he's had that steady production. I agree. If he is on Neighbors and Neighbors plays, Neighbors gets like 10, 15 targets regularly. And if he catches half of those and Moore makes a tackle in half of that half, you're already at 4. So I think there's a lot of good logic and good momentum there as long as Neighbors plays. I'm like you, though. If Neighbors is out, I just have no idea what that team is going to look like. Theo Johnson's out for the season, and he started having some momentum. I think Bellinger is back at starting tight end. Wan'Dale Robinson is still kicking around there somewhere. I think Jalen Hyatt finally had a catch after I've drafted him and sat on him forever. So if Neighbors is out, then that offense is just going to be too ugly to really want much from the defense other than pass rushers. I think I can see, pass rushers being a little bit more attractive, whether it's Odengbo or Pay or the interior guys in Buckner and Grover Stewart as some decent options. But yeah, I like Kenny Moore, especially if Neighbors plays. But if not, and you really want to be in this game, maybe look at a sack prop along the defensive line.
Yep. Good call there. Good stuff. Beautiful. Well, we got some great options out there. We did end up getting some comments asking start sit questions. I would just ask you guys to hit up the live show this Sunday morning before all the games, or tweet, DM anyone on staff. Go to the site, theidpshow.com. We got you covered. But that is not something we do during this show, so our apologies. Before we get out of here, Scott, thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it. It's always great having you on. Where can the people find you? Are you working on anything this off season? Any announcements for the crowd?
Yeah, no, it's always great to be on with you too. And I've told you this before, it's always kind of surreal because it was your CB Corner article that got me started in writing my defensive tackle article, and you helping to promote my stuff that got me so that I can be on shows like this on the IDP show. So it's always a whole lot of fun, and I never take for granted being able to hop on with you. But right now, just have going on the DL streaming. Posted a supersized version of that this week with I believe 42 defensive linemen who are rostered in less than 50% of leagues. I had been doing 25% or less, but given this is championship week for a lot of folks, I want to throw out a few more options. I didn't do as many write-ups, but I did give all my underlying metrics this week. So you can see PFF pass rush grades, run defense grades, snap shares, and fantasy points allowed to that specific position across the season for all 42 of those players, as well as how they stack up in terms of the regression that I run behind the scenes to figure out what tiers they're in. So check that out. That's available on the IDP show. And if you haven't done it yet, please add your leagues to that State of IDP survey. There's a link in every single article that I do. You can DM me, you can message me anywhere, and I'll be happy to send you the information. I think we're up around almost 300 leagues represented in the database this year, with another big push hopefully coming. I'd love to hit 400 this year because the more information we get, the better we're going to be able to serve you. Maybe there are a lot of CB only leagues out there that we just don't know about. That could be a whole niche that we're missing. And maybe it's not this absolutely insane thing. And there are a lot of other folks like you out there. The only way we learn about those things existing is from hearing from you. And so the survey takes less than 5 minutes per league, gives us a lot of good information, and not just us. This is a public service I do for the community. I share the data with everyone. I make the data publicly available. There's no names or anything in it. We're also doing a couple of giveaways this year in terms of memberships to the IDP Show premium site, as well as I'm doing a couple of charity donations. If you want to nominate a charity, I'll draw those out of a hat when it's all said and done as well. So those are the big things I have going on. Looking forward to rookie coverage because I do rookie rankings every year combined, offense and defense. So excited for the winter break to be done. And then when the spring semester starts up, that's when we start looking towards the future here. And as primarily a dynasty player, that's my favorite time of the year.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you, my friend. It's always great having you on. You always bring excellent information. It is greatly appreciated. Before we get out of here, just a quick reminder, please subscribe to our YouTube channel for our other shows, the flagship IDP Show podcast, the IDP After Show, IDP Trade Show, and IDP Drafts. If you'd like to support the show, you can do so for just $5 a month over at theidpshow.com. We've got premium features for paid supporters that we know you'll enjoy. Follow us on Twitter at the IDP Show, all one word. Thank you for listening. Good luck this week, everyone. Go get those titles. Set your inactive alarms. There are games all over the place. Set your inactive alarms. Don't lose like that. Make them beat you. Control what you can control. And good luck this week, my friends. We'll catch you for the Super Bowl. Have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye.